We're live. Good evening. I would like to call this special meeting of the Board of Education to order. The next regular meeting of the Board of Education is on Tuesday, January 27 at 7:30 p.m. For the chairperson's report tonight, thank you all for being here tonight. Tonight, the Board of Education will continue the process of reviewing the specific responsibility center budgets as part of the fiscal 27 budget process. Thank you to Dr. Byrne and our administration for your work developing the fiscal 27 budget, which we will continue reviewing in detail tonight and over the next 2 weeks. We will be covering the special education and athletics proposed budgets tonight, and there will be opportunity for public comment at the end of the meeting. On January 27, we will cover the operations and capital budgets. The formal Board of Education public hearing will be held on February 3rd, during which community members will have the opportunity to speak and share specific feedback on the proposed budget. The board will vote on the superintendent's proposed fiscal 27 budget on Thursday, February 5th. The board is committed to providing the best possible education for our students and shares the community's desire to prioritize student needs and programming in alignment with our strategic goals. We look forward to hearing more tonight from our Assistant Superintendent, Special Education and Student Services, Ms. Shirley Klein, and from our Director of Athletics, Mr. Christopher Manfredonia, who will share more tonight about their 26 and 27 programming, goals, and budget highlights. Thank you. We'll now move on to Superintendent report. Thank you.
So I have no report for this evening, but I did want to set a little bit of context for tonight's presentations. I was asked quite a number of times when I first came to the school district. Right, now we're on. I was asked many times when I first came to the school district, what drew me to the district? And one of the things I shared quite frequently was the wealth of opportunities for our students. Tonight, we're going to hear about 2 departments where incredibly important work is happening. Special education and student services, where we have incredibly talented educators across the system that work to meet the individual needs of our neurodiverse students and help them achieve the tenets of the vision of the graduate. In addition, we have Chris Manfredonia, who will present the health and physical education and athletics budget. Really talk to us about those opportunities outside of the classroom that kids are able to find themselves, find their voice, and share their spirit with the community. So I'm very excited for both presentations for this evening and look forward to a rich conversation.
Thank you. Moving on to presentation and discussion of proposed fiscal 27 budget for special education and physical education and athletics. Ms. Shirley Klein will be first. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, members of the Board of Education, Dr. Byrne and members of the Darien community. Thank you for the opportunity to present our budget this evening. Tonight, I'll review the special education budget with a focus on how our resources align with student need, legal requirements, and our commitment to providing exemplary services for all our learners in our school community. I'd like to acknowledge the contribution of our special education and student services leadership team in the development of this budget. Present here tonight are Dr. Scott McCarthy, K-12 Director, Laura Strayton, ELP Director, Program Directors at Darien High School, Janine Newell, and Program Director Sarah Malley from Middle School, and our special education and student services assistant principals in all our elementary schools. If you don't mind, I'd like to just do an introduction for them. We have Danielle Cummings from Tokenique, Maya Feldman from Ox Ridge, Christina Ross Taylor from Hindley, Anne-Marie Galagano from Holmes, and Amanda Carney from Royal. Thank you all for being here this evening. It's greatly appreciated. Thank you for all your contributions to developing this budget. We appreciate the board's continued support, and we will work responsibly for future and current demands. So to begin with, on the vision of the graduate, and I know Amy spoke last week, but we begin with the attributes that comprise the vision of the graduate as the governance of all teaching and learning for all students and all stakeholders in the Darien school community. When we looked at the operational standards, we looked at the proposed budget for 2027 and what commitment to our operational standards they are: excellence in teaching, research-based professional development, and continued instructional improvement. And of course, fiscal responsibility that ensures efficiency of resources, personnel, and long-term financial stability. We'll begin with RC 24, which includes our K through 12 budget. And the content of our presentation tonight includes a brief overview of our current programs, enrollment trends, and department initiatives which comprise the basis for our 27 fiscal year budget proposals. We'd like to begin with our areas of focus. At the Board of Education meeting, you will recall on May 13th, 2025, we presented areas of focus that were generated from the work of our K through 5 identification rate self-study. These areas of focus, in addition to focus areas that align with our district strategic plan, comprise the areas of focus for the current 2025 school year and proposed 2026-27 school year. We'd like to begin with the first operational standard, and that's our focus on professional learning and development. In strengthening K through 5 comprehensive reading instruction, our elementary special education teachers participated in an Orton Gillingham 5-day course training for classroom educator level certification this year. 18 special education teachers and 2 special education administrators successfully completed the training and received their OG classroom educator certification. Our OG associate level training has also begun. Our cohort 1, which includes 10 teachers who began their practicum this year. The practicum is a 2-year program supervised by an OG fellow who conducts observations and support and lesson planning and monitoring that OG practice is conducted with fidelity. Successful completion of the practicum results in Orton Gillingham Academy associate level certification, and cohort 1 will complete their program in June 2027. Cohort 2 will begin next year, and they will complete their 2-year practicum in June of 2028. Our operational standard of ensuring continual instructional program improvement. We're looking at our SESS collaboration with MTSS teams. As you know, last week, I believe, Amy presented on MTSS and the team structure. We've been participating with our special education staff, district and building level teams to address elementary and secondary identification trends and tiered intervention monitoring and practices. The special education administrators and teachers are an essential part of this planning in tiered intervention. Understanding design, UBD. SES administrators have collaborated with curriculum instructional teams on the UBD framework for educational planning and to ensure teaching from understanding instructional practices are apparent and with fidelity. You may also remember, I think Ronnie actually presented on UBD one of the curriculum meetings last year in detail of understanding by design. Professional learning for clinicians. This has been a very strong initiative this year. Very often in general education classrooms, there were a lot of need for behavioral intervention, and we were relying just on school psychologists or clinical personnel to really support that. We really want to go beyond that and be able to give agency to teachers, to administrators, to all stakeholders in the building to be able to address those needs. So during the 25-26 school year, our professional learning for clinicians included a series of seminars for psychologists and social workers on frameworks for effective behavioral intervention in a consultation model. Dr. Melissa Collier-Meek, a psychologist, BCBA professor and researcher at Teachers College, is expert in behavioral consultation and has partnered with us to provide professional learning for our clinicians. She'll be returning next year. On the continued areas of programming, we looked at the operational standard for providing programmatic and financial support to achieve district goals. In secondary transition planning we've spoke about over the years, the focus in this current year is on assessments to inform student pathways for post-secondary transitional programs. In addition, Exploration of partnerships with neighboring districts for shared programming and resources to support students in transitional programming opportunities has been an essential part of our planning. In our ELP and K-based plan learning, play-based learning is successfully implemented in both ELP and the kindergarten classrooms. Ongoing training is being attended by Laura Straighton, our ELP program director, and one of our ELP special education teachers and general education teachers are also participating in the Yukon Leadership Program. And our local district consortium, which is one of our strongest initiatives for this year. We've begun to meet regularly with our neighboring of New Canaan administrators and Wilton administrators to explore and consider shared opportunities for students in specialized instructional programs and transitional programs. We currently have students who are participating in transitional programs in New Canaan, as well as specialized programs in Wilton. We'd like to expand this to look at shared practices, perhaps shared professional learning and opportunities with those two districts who are part of our DIRG, and proximity to our neighborhood makes it very accessible for our students in terms of proximity. When we looked at our other operational standard commitment, we looked at ensuring efficient deployment of resources and personnel in district SLPs. We've been very fortunate to be able to now have on our staff specialized language personnel who provide professional learning for our colleagues and ongoing consultation. Actually, one of our providers we currently contracted with for several years, and she is now full-time on our staff here. That's Shelley Ransom, who works both in our elementary and middle schools to support students, to support speech and language pathologists, and to learn new methodologies for language therapy. And when we look at our enrollment trends, our CDAC report that comes out on October 1st shows that there has been a decrease in fewer classified students than the 2024-25, approximately 25 students. We just want to share that the decrease is noted primarily as a reflection. We had a large graduating class in 25 that contributes to that, as well as in other schools, but primarily of the DHS exiting of seniors. And in our continuous services, we've shared this over the years, and it's in more detail in the appendix today. But just to go over the continuous services of what our support staff and our special education administrators and teachers provide for our students. General education programs have speeches-related service for the least restrictive environment. That means that our students spend the majority of their day in the general education class and go for speech and language therapy only as a related service. The next level of least restrictive would be general education with supplemental services. That would look at our ELP integrated program models, push-in services in our general education classes and co-taught classes in grades 6 through 12. Our special education supplemental services, those where we have small group resource rooms, learning centers as designed in the high school, specialized literacy instruction in all our buildings. In addition, we have our AIM and our core classes, which are specialized social emotional programs to support the needs of students at MMS and DHS, respectively. Our modified content classes are comprehensive classes, and those are modified content-based classes that align to the general education curriculum and are available based on student needs in grades 6 through 12. Currently in Middlesex, we have modified classes in mathematics, and in the high school, we have modified classes in the 4 core subjects. And lastly, our specialized programs include our 4 K through 5 DLC programs housed at Oxbridge, 2 alternative learning centers at MMS, and of course, our Excel program at DHS. These programs support our learners with comprehensive needs, providing modified curriculum, adaptive, behavioral, social, and community programming. Our out-of-district overview for the continuum. When we're not able to educate our students in district, when we've utilized all our resources and support and worked to, of course, educate our students in their community schools, we have to look at special education services from the least to the most restrictive environments. The programming overview for out-of-district continuum starts with state-approved day programs. Those are programs that are approved by the State Department of Education. Then state-approved therapeutic day programs. And for students who require a higher level of support, we move on to state-approved therapeutic and transition residential programs. Those are students who require a wraparound 24/7 program to meet their educational needs. When we're not able to find a program for students and we've exhausted everything in state, we do go to out-of-state programs. And that's a last resort. But there are educational supports in out-of-state programs that can meet our students' needs. And lastly, there are times where students require support in hospital settings. In moving forward to our areas of focus for the 2026-27 year, we're going to continue to strengthen specialized reading instruction through Orton Gillingham Professional Learning. As I mentioned, our cohort 1 and cohort 2 will continue with their practicum. We will also be this year with Amy, and our department will be sharing general education training for elementary school teachers, as well as OG training for our special education teachers on the secondary level. We'll be collaborating on the implementation of MTSS screening. We'll move more toward screening, intervention, and monitoring. And as Amy spoke to last week when she presented on looking at data to really inform instruction and tier participation. Our continuing of development of clinicians' capacity will continue training in the consultative model for district-wide clinicians. And I just want to take a moment to, when I said it earlier. So our consultative model means that our psychologists will be working with teachers, general education teachers, special education teachers, and other members in their school to give them the skill set to be able to work with students who are having differing behaviors, to do that with confidence and with agency. We'd also like to formalize our local district consortium with shared goals and action items. We're actually speaking with Wilton right now about looking at a specialized program for children that might have some behavioral intervention needs. And if we can share students, I just want to mention that we were able to do this in my former district. And now that Dr. Byrne is here also, we had a consortium of 5 districts where we were able to really look at students because we didn't have a cohort for that program. But when we looked at the other 5 districts, and they were neighboring districts, we were very successful. And I believe it still continues. And also on the area of focus for continued secondary transition planning and post-secondary planning needs. When we look at our review of student cohort for 2026 and 2027, as well as 27-28, what we can do for transitional needs, and can we begin to consider building our program and revisiting that? So we'll be looking at that as an opportunity as well. Our partnership in professional learning for understanding by design, UBD. Framework also will continue the work for framework utilizing teacher feedback and student outcomes to really determine, are we being effective with our UBD curriculum framework. We'll continue our professional learning and implementation for UDL also for the diverse needs of all learners. And I know we've spoken of UDL over the years, but understanding that all teachers should feel confident and competent in creating inclusive and accessible, engaging learning environments for children by understanding their backgrounds, their ability, and their learning styles. And we also have begun this year to look at calibrating and implementing processes for allocation of paraeducators. We know that as students go on, we look at independence and fostering independence, and we need to see the specific roles and responsibilities of our paraeducators and to identify the need by collecting data on student behavior and student needs and making recommendations consistent with what those needs are. And we're beginning that this year and we'll implement it next year. And to go on to expenditure highlights for RC24 in our narrative as well. Our consultant service decrease in district support and just changes in student need. Our contracted OT, luckily we now have a Darien district OT for ELP. We were contracting prior to that. Our pupil evaluation decrease reflects outsourcing, a reduction of outsourcing evaluations, also covering maternity leaves for their own psychologist interns. That has really been helpful in reducing that cost. And our tuition non-public schools, I know we've spoken to that prior to this evening. 5 students return to district and changes in students' programs in outside placements and related costs as well. When we look at our expenditure highlight additions, contracted speech with a slight adjustment to contracted speech. Professional learning is the $10,000 that we will use to support our OG Academy. Transportation drivers, the increase reflects the addition of 2 new vehicles, the drivers for those vehicles. Our ESY program in 2027 will actually have 9 days of ESY in the fiscal year in June. Our tuition public schools, those are student programs and transition programs. Our middle school special education teacher, and we also described in our narrative that the addition of the 1.0 FTE at Middlesex is warranted to address the current anticipated enrollment of the 2026-27 school year. The allocation will allow special education teachers to remain team-based and permit co-taught classes to meet the requirement of being less than 50% students with IEPs. That's compliant with the regulations. Our dues and memberships, the increase reflects Orton Gillingham Associate Certification, fees for 10 elementary special education teachers. We will be responsible for paying for those membership dues. And our excess cost reimbursement, I know Rich has spoken to that before, the changes based on projected changes in student expenditures per pupil, and we're looking at 70%. I'd like to move on to ELP, RC 26. The early learning program, as you know, is an integrated preschool program. Our children are 3 to 5 years of age with learning differences. And we anticipate that our ELP program will reach between 100 and 110 students this school year. Our early learning program continuum services from least restrictive, beginning also as itinerant services where students who attend community preschools can come for related services of speech or other services. Our 19-hour program is our integrated program for all learners. And our 24-hour program are for students who may require additional specialized instruction to address their educational needs. And that occurs between 8:30 and 9:30 prior to the integrated daily program for all learners. We provide speech and language therapy, school psychologist, counseling, OT, PT, teacher of the hearing impaired, and our teacher of the visually impaired we use through BESB. Our expenditure highlights for ELP are we're asking from a change from a 0.8 FTE psychologist to a 1.0 FTE psychologist. We're now a 5-day program and the needs of our early learners warrant that additional support. Our professional development, this change reflects training for 9 staff members, 1 per classroom in first aid, CPR, and AED use. And our ELP tuition, which that change reflects an increase in ELP tuition. Our budget next steps with Dr. Burns' schedule is January 27th. As Ms. Nelson said earlier, we'll have the regular Board of Education meeting moving forward for presentation, discussion of operations, and questions, comments, and feedback. Emails for everyone who would like to reach out. There are multiple sources to reach out to. And I'd be delighted to answer any questions that anyone may have. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you very much. This is a really informative kind of a presentation. I have a couple of questions before we open it up for board. And first, I'd like to focus first on RC 24 special education, and then we can continue any questions on ELP. You had mentioned for the paraprofessionals, the paras calibrating and implementing a process and with data collection. Can you expand a little bit more on what we are using now and what you anticipate in terms of the data collection in order to allocate resources going forward?
I think right now we're using more anecdotal information or qualitative information, and we want quantitative information. We want to know how often does the behavior occur? How does the student respond to the intervention? What are the interventions that, and monitor, are they effective and how are they progressing? So I think we're going to move from qualitative to quantitative and have a checklist that general education teachers will complete, as well as related service providers who may be providing services.
Okay, thank you. I had one very small question that in the personnel, there was a 0.2 FTE for elementary that I believe is funded by an IDEA grant.
Yes.
In the grant detail, it doesn't show a move from 0.4 to 0.6. So I don't know if that's just
Okay.
something that I guess Rich kind of keeps track of all of the the grant funding, but I was
So the
curious.
IDA grant is a 2-year grant, so you have carryover and then you have a current year grant. And so it's split between the two, which is why you don't see the clear 0.2.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Are there board questions? Joanna?
And may I just add one thing to that, Robin?
Yeah.
So that 0.6, that's Deb Riley, who really helps all our elementary schools. She does additional evaluations. She also is able to cover missed sessions. So if people are attending, or providers are attending PPTs, she's able to cover those classes very effectively and very professionally. She's been an excellent help also as teachers have not been here. She's been here to fill those while we look for highly qualified people.
Great, thank you. Joanna?
Hi, I have a bunch of questions, but I'll start with the tuition non-public. It's nearly $1 million in savings year over year. And out-of-district tuition is usually pretty volatile. PPTs might happen in the middle of the year, or students might go out of district, find it's not working and come back. Even this past fall, we had these 5 students that left and then came back, and there's usually corresponding costs associated with that for like support in district and maybe more paraeducators or whatever else they need. So are there more, or where would I find some corresponding costs with this $1 million in savings that the district is now taking on?
I'm not quite sure. I need more information. So where would you find in terms of the
So
granular piece of
Right.
which-
So for instance, this fall, 5 students came back and we had a surplus of $377,000. And simultaneously, we also then had a cost for consultants of $330,000 to support those students. I'm wondering what other costs might we have next year, or where they are in the budget that you've already set. So I understand what these students are coming back, but or are they just graduating entirely? And if they are coming back, where are our expenses going up?
So the students that have returned to district, they are included already, whether it's in related service providers or in different instructional programs. And you're right, there are children who we don't know are coming back and they may return to us, and we don't know that at this time in terms of presenting for our budget. Because as you know, students who might be in out-of-district programs might be returning, they might be changing programs in out-of-district programs. So the best we can do in terms of anticipating what those expenditures would be is those are all, we have PPTs, we have conversations about if they'll be returning or not returning. We plan for their return and we accordingly plan for that. So we have planned for 2026, 27 for the students we know who are returning or who have returned. And that said, there may be students that we're not aware of that we will have to really, hopefully we might have to come back to the board, but come back and say that they've returned or knew it. We've had students move in on May 19th. 2 years ago, we had a student move in with a high need at May 19th, and we had no knowledge of that, and we really had to come back. We needed more paras. So I think we'll just keep the board informed. I'll keep the superintendent informed as we learn more about students returning to district. As I said, all of our out-of-district students that are IEP placed, we conduct the IEPs, we monitor the programs, so we're fully knowledgeable of where they are in their current programs.
So just to follow up, if you recall, so we did do a transfer earlier in the year for some of those students that came back. And so when you look at the budget book and consult services, the original budget was 1.2 million. The budget for next year is 1.4, but we go against revised budget, which is why you don't necessarily see the increase because you've already accounted for some of it.
Thank you.
You'll see the same thing in speech.
Thank you.
Can I follow up on that? So to Joanna's point, I think this is a really interesting kind of through line for us to think about. For example, even as we see in this presentation here, we're adding another 0.2 FTE of a psychologist because we moved ELP from 4 to 5 days. So I am curious about how we might look back to look forward when we make a change, when we have a new initiative, and we can't predict everything that day, but as years come along, like where do we kind of capture that so that it is a whole picture of kind of what happened in the history of it? That's not kind of a scavenger hunt of knowing and finding.
Great question. Great question. I'd like to think about the answer, but I totally agree. If we can capture that, because to the point, when a child does return, it does change the fabric of what the fiscal responsibilities are for us in district. And transfers happen, as Rich said, and we do that throughout the year, and we've done that in different services. I'd like to say that I'd like to look at how we can do that to best capture that. It's reasonable and it also informs us. And we know that as our students age out also, when they age out, there are funds that were there and where those go to. So I think, give us a little time to think of the best way to present that, and to enlist help from.
I think it's almost like as we prepare for the spring update, we think about telling the story with history of different programs and how they've evolved over time. So that may be something we can think about in our planning for that update. And how that's enabling us to best meet the needs of the community and our student population, and where the ebb and flow of the different program changes exist. So I think we could certainly do that in the spring update, and there's a good way to present that.
And to be clear, I know that all of us who are speaking on this know this, but just to reiterate, we're talking about looking at trends in the district, not about following individual students and having a history on them, but really about like, what are we seeing in terms of the programs and the trends? Thank you.
Thank you. Dennis.
So to this point, I just want to, I think it's, for me, it's been a focus for the board and also you and your staff. And I want to say kudos for you for bringing these children back into district and having not have to disrupt families and transport people to out of district schools. And so now we get I think it's a win-win for all of us, as we get a savings of almost $1 million of out of district savings, but we're also now educating children in their hometown, which is another win. So it's a great story,
Thank you.
one we should celebrate.
Thank you. And we share that. I do want to just mention also, 10 years ago when we arrived here, our DLC program had 5 children in it. We have 20 children in our program now. So it's also children that we'd be able to keep here and who haven't gone out. Also, to your point, Dennis, that's extraordinary. We have 4 DLC classes, and that's extraordinary. We can work with them. 2 ALC classes. Our Excel program, when we arrived 10 years ago, I think there were 6 students in it, and I think we have 15. I think 15 students.
Great story to tell.
Yeah, that's.
Joanna,
tell you
did
exactly how many we have.
additional-
Yeah, does anyone want to suggest anything to?
15.
Oh, okay.
Greg has a question.
Just a real quick one, and thanks for the presentation. For the pupil evaluations that are down by 100,000, is that enrollment driven, or like what's driving that, and how do you see that going forward?
Some of that we're doing in-house, some have to do with IEs, how many IEs are requested a year also, so that's a big portion. Also, some psychiatric evaluations, depending on each year of how many outside evaluations are done on that level. So I think it's the change of student need. And a lot of it also is brought in by our in-house, our interns have helped with that also, doing evaluations in-house.
My next questions are personnel based. First of all, Shelley Ransom is amazing. So it's very exciting to have her here in district. Is she an FTE or is she just a full-time consultant? So where does she live in the budget?
She lives under speech language therapist.
Speech there.
Okay, great. Thank you. And is she just being deployed out wherever she's needed? Is that sort of how it works?
She's using a lot elementary and middle school right now. Oh, no, in high school too. Elementary and high school.
Fantastic. And then for the special education teacher at Middlesex, is this an indication? So we want to be able to keep, each team gets one, special education teacher, right? Does that mean this year, with the split teams, right now you have teachers sort of floating around, or how's that working this year compared to what you need for next year?
Sarah could speak to it better than I. Your color.
Right now, currently on the split team, on the teal team, we do have a special education teacher that is assigned to 6th grade teal. And then we also have a special education teacher assigned to 7th grade teal. So the split team does have a special education teacher for each one of those, where there is a split team in the 8th grade. And that is because those 2 8th grade special education teachers also teach direct reading classes. So they make up one special education teacher caseload on that team. So it's kind of divvied up between our different specialty programs like direct reading, comprehensive math. But the split team did have a special education teacher, does have a special education teacher assigned for each grade.
Okay, so then this might be a general question for you, Dr. Byrne. Or I don't know if you're already planning on this. Sorry, I don't remember what's in the master agenda, but could we have a general update about how the split team is working in the middle school? If this is something that's going to go on in the future, and how that works with also our educational
So
services?
it's not for next year. There is no split teams next year, straight teams across the levels. But I did propose earlier in the year, and I'm working on a draft master agenda for the spring that would include updates from the different levels. So we'll have a chance with the middle school to be able to talk through some of those.
Thank you.
So I'll be sharing that draft with board leadership this week.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Other questions? Dennis?
Yeah, I love this idea of the district consortium between Darien, New Canaan, and Wilton. But my question is, and I don't know if you can speak for the other two districts. I think where we are, those are our two closest, but New Canaan is close to Ridgefield, Wilton's close to Westport and Easton, Weston, Reading, and things like that. Are they contacting schools close to them so we can build even more mass, or is it just the three schools in?
We offered to our entire Durgay, so we offered it to Westport, to Weston, to Ridgefield. The districts that wanted to participate right now were New Canaan and Wilton. It may open further, but right now, those were the two that were really
I
interested.
don't want to put more work on, I would love to share the wealth. I don't want to put it all on New Canaan and Wilton because they're central, but
Yeah.
it would be great if we could all pool ourselves together and try to figure this out in a.
I suspect, I mean, a big rationale for this is the challenges that we're all faced with, the rising costs. But those two districts understand what we're trying to do. And I think once this shows and program, then we're going to have trouble keeping other districts away from
Agreed.
joining this consortium. If I recall correctly, it just started with the 5 down in the Sound Shore and then constantly with other districts wanting to join that same consortium. But there is a sort of magic number where it works and where it gets too big. So it's a great starting point with two very motivated districts that have a lot of commonalities to us and recognize the same challenges. They're facing the same challenges we are. And we have good working relationships with them already. So it's kind of seamless.
Thank you.
Just following up on that, on the shared consortium. If, for instance, we have students that go to New Canaan for transition services and they might have a student that comes to our district for a service, do they pay a revenue portion for that student to the district, or do we pay New Canaan, or how does this work?
They charge, we have an agreed upon tuition rate.
Okay, and.
So we
and-
pay
So
them
it's
a
both.
tuition.
Yeah.
Right, and we currently have a program that they come, or do they currently have students coming to Darien?
Not at this time.
They do not. Okay. But you're looking at increasing or thinking
Yeah,
about that.
absolutely.
Thank you. Sarah?
And building on this, I love this idea of the consortium. Do you, and pardon me if you said this, but do you have an idea of prioritization of which cohorts you think you would start with working?
Social emotional learning for elementary students.
Okay. Is there a second cohort? I'm just curious, like how far down the road this could.
Well, we
Grow.
currently, I think that's where we're all seeing a need, a really strong need for those because those children who very often are placed outside of the
Right.
district. So I think we're looking at that cohort right now. And actually Wilton is building a program right now, where they're in the process of piloting a program. So we're kind of working with them to see how that works.
Okay. Thanks.
Other questions? Katie?
Thank you. It'd be great to have a bit more information on the consortium. I can tell that the board's questions are echoing some of my own thoughts just about maybe not feeling as fully read into where we're at with that as we'd like to be. I'd be curious about what all is on the table, what isn't, kind of how often we're meeting and what decisions might come out of that, or what processes would have to go from any conversations that have on that, just this being something kind of new. It would be good to just understand that a little bit more. I I have a couple other questions too, regarding the clinician's capacity to employ consultative frameworks. Shirley, can you talk a little bit more about that?
I'm going to turn that to Scott because he's been coordinating all those efforts. He and Alicia Dad have also been working on that. So they'll speak about the program.
Sure. So as you know, the school psychologists and our clinicians, their primary role is to provide direct service and then conduct assessments and evaluations. But another arm of their intervention process is consultation, which is direct face-to-face adult-to-adult learning for the purpose of intervening on a student's behavior. And so there's a structure to consultation. It's not just a conversation. There's a structure to a problem-solving conversation, implementing an intervention, tracking the intervention. But you can imagine that, especially for our youngest learners, where we're seeing the intensive behaviors that are occurring in classroom and general education, teachers are struggling to have the kind of the capacity and bandwidth and skill set to implement on those interventions. That's actually the space where you want to intervene. So taking a student out, providing a direct service and teaching, and then putting the student back isn't always the most research-based or evidence-based way to change a behavior. And so really giving the teacher the skills and the capacity is what a consultative framework does.
Thank you. So I just want to clarify a couple of things. So when you are using the term clinician, are you using that interchangeably with our school psychologists?
Typically targeting school psychologists and school social workers.
So can you just be a little more explicit about what you mean in terms of increasing clinicians' capacity and who is doing that?
So the professional learning that's ongoing through the year is what we're using to increase the capacity of our school social workers and our school psychologists to implement consultative frameworks in the schools.
So, okay, so then what you're saying is that you're having professional development that occurs when students are not in school that is targeted for school psychologists and social workers so that they are then learning how to employ these frameworks. And then when they have this ability, they will then go and start working with our teachers in the classrooms so that they can better handle issues as they're arising in the moment.
Correct. And even this is reflected in the revised Connecticut IEP. So in the old IEP framework, there was just direct services and then related services. So you have your special ed services and your related services. And now there's another service page called the indirect services. So those are designed to be services that are not with the student, but for the student in service of the student. That's consultation.
Sorry, there's a lot here. So my question then is, I'm interested in what the day looks like for school psychologists and for social workers, right? Like what is on their plate and how many kind of different tasks are they juggling? And then additionally, what is on our teachers' plate? Because I think that, a big part of this is teachers not having the bandwidth and not having the ability when they have 24 students in their classroom, right? And they, just to get through the lessons and to differentiate and to handle everyone's needs. And then when there is a special circumstance in particular, I'm curious about how we think the reality of training will be able to adequately manage this. And do we, where do we face a tipping point of needing more adults in the room, of relooking at our class size, of looking at what other list of possible alternatives might be, in a creative mindset? Like,
Yeah, I think
where are
there's
we at?
I think there's a few layers to that question. One of the layers is that consultation is an evidence-based intervention framework. And so our clinicians having the greatest toolkit that they have to address problem behavior and challenging behavior is important. So we want to make sure that they are trained and able to implement best practices. What also plays out is that students being pulled out of class for the purposes of receiving direct intervention from our clinicians, when it's not the best practice model for that type of behavior, is actually reducing everyone's bandwidth by taking up the time of the school psychologist to work on something that's not then generalizing. And the general teacher is still managing the behavior in the classroom because it's not been generalized. And so typically the two things work together. The school psychologist might pull the student for a certain period of time to do some skill instruction, and then utilize a consultation framework to help the teacher generalize that into their classroom setting, with the goal of increasing independence and reducing adult support. So it's designed in the spirit of increasing bandwidth for both parties.
May I just add to that? And I think our teachers I'll speak as an educator, are excited about having that skill. Because as Scott said, if you go to the school psychologist and you're able to regulate the child, and the child comes down, when they come back into the classroom, there could be another episode. I think teachers and administrators in the elementary school especially are saying, we want to have a toolkit of what to do. We want to know how to manage the behavior and do that without relying on a related service provider or administrator, because there are students in our class and they truly are appreciative of learning those skills. They really are. And it's the same way they're appreciative of learning effective skills in whether it's executive functioning or whether it's different kinds of management. Knowing when you're a teacher and when you have that great management of being able to really help kids regulate and do that, some of the teachers have it intuitively. It's amazing. I mean, you've seen that with teachers your child has had. Some have it intuitively and they just know what to do. And some of them are really asking, what can I do to help decrease that behavior? What can I do to intervene with the student and not have to rely on someone else to do it? So I think they are welcoming that training. It's not just adding more to them. It's actually making their classroom experience a much more positive experience and giving them agency.
Yes, so I have no doubt about that.
Yeah.
Everything that you described is exactly as I would expect, and that all makes sense to me. To put it bluntly, I think the question that I'm asking is, we are having more and more conversations about behaviors and about the social emotional needs of our student population. So while this sounds like a great step and a necessary one to take, how much impact do we think it's going to have, and are we approaching a crisis?
I would say that I think there are a multitude of things within not just this budget, in the curriculum budget, across the school budgets, that are really going to help us be able to address those needs of kids. And if we find that we need something more, I'll be the first one to stand up here and say, we need to go in a different direction. Honestly, I think the greatest strength we could have as a system is having regular, ongoing professional learning that we're committed to bringing experts in to work with our teachers and our staff to best meet the needs of kids. And what we have to be careful of not doing is saying in a tough budget year, we need to cut this professional learning. Our teachers should know this already, because these are things we really need to continue to focus on. I'll also say that I think the board's class size guidelines are quite reasonable. And when I look at our actual class sizes, they're very good for us to be able to do the best job we can meeting the needs of kids. I think we've got, when you think about MTSS, all of the effort and the work and planning that's going into MTSS, that's going to help us better meet the needs of those kids struggling academically or behaviorally. So I'm very optimistic. And if we get to a point where we think that we need to pivot and do something different or double down and do more of something, you're going to hear it right here at this table.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Just one final question on this conversation. Are we seeing any implications of the reduction of general classroom paraprofessionals from this year affecting?
The instructional aides?
I'm not talking about the
The
special
general
education.
education, in my discussions with the principals as we prepared the budget, that was not something that came up, that there was a concern.
Okay, thank you.
Are there other questions, Bill?
Just a quick question. I'm trying to wrap my head around budget variability. And by that, I mean, as students move in and out of the district based on their needs, of course. Do we have any kind of historical trend? Does it cost more to educate out of the district than in the district? If we have, what is a typical movement been historically? And I'll preface this, my concern is that we not be surprised by I see the tuition non-public schools, almost $1 million. We're not going to be surprised by $1 million swings, are we?
So the answer to the first part of the question, which is, it's really based on student needs. So there are students in district that their programs cost greater than an outside district program. That's not that unusual, especially for some of our comprehensive learners. So that may be.
I've heard that, yes.
Yeah. So it's really about what program a student needs, and it is variable. And I think that's what I think earlier, to find a way to see what students are going out and also students coming in, that we need a way to report out on that.
Does it come out in the wash? Is it a wash, or is there a significant difference that we need to account for?
It really depends on student need, because for instance, if we have several students right now in transition programs, there's a cost to those transition programs. So it depends on students where they age out. Students are educated till they're 22. So right now, we have over 10 students who are in transition programs. So there's a cost outside of the district, which is why we continue to consider looking in district as well. Just thought I'd bring that up in case we go back to that. But so I think it's hard. There's not an answer to that. Well, there's really not an answer, because it depends on the student need. From year to year, it may
It's
change.
just too individualized to the.
Right, and it's having flexibility within our program offerings and our support offerings, so that if there, and over the last number of years, the district has expanded, as Shirley talked about, the different programs. Having those solid programs that support a wide range of learners is what's going to put us in the best position to tackle a great need on any given year.
Well, I fully support that. I just was, if there was a significant, like 5 students left to go out, if 5 came back, is that a typical number? Is that going to skew our?
There is no
county?
typical. No, really,
That's a fair
there is no
answer, I
typical.
understand,
And on our job is to build enough high quality programs and supports for our families and students that we can manage them and manage those supports and give those kids and those families what they need.
I
So,
absolutely,
yeah.
I'm just thinking how to pay for, how we account. Do we have any, a
So we-
leeway in the budget where we can absorb?
So we don't have any leeway. So we do track every student that's going out of district, and we have what's internally called a watch list, where there are students that could potentially go out of district. This year we had some students come in and it created a budgetary savings. A few years ago, we had a few students go out and we ended up having to ask for a supplemental appropriation from town. So it really depends. So if we're to work in reverse and we had some students go out of district, typically we'll show that line item as a deficit. And if we can chip away at that deficit through budget transfers, if we have savings in other places of the budget,
Right.
we will.
Yeah,
And sometimes it means that the board should cover it in whole. Sometimes we can cover it in part. And if we can cover it in part, we ask for the town support for the other part. And if we can't cover it at all, we go to the town and ask for support. And we get the information.
Do you remember, I'm just curious, do you recall when we had to go back to the town and ask for more money, about how much that was?
I believe it was a couple $100,000. Because we did cover a lot through internal transfers. We had some vacant positions, and then we decided not to fill some non-certified staff positions, and the board transferred money into those accounts. When the students went out, we did have some in-district funds like consult services that we didn't spend as much because the students weren't here. So then we moved that money to non-public tuition. And then, we would piece money from salary savings and supplies and do a lot of different transfers. But then we asked for a couple $100,000, the Board of Finance supported it, the RTM supported it. And then in the end, I think we ended up giving back about $3,000. So in the chart that Dr. Burton showed in his presentation, it was about 600 one year, 600 one year, and then the year that was about $3,000, that was the year we had for the total.
Thank you. It's just difficult to, it really can't predict. It's too individualized.
It can be a move.
Thank you.
Are there other questions on RC 24? Okay, so we'll move on to questions on ELP. I have a couple questions. One was on tuition. Do we have comparable tuition rates for 5-day programs for preschools in our area? That's one question. And then what is the number of students that are projected and assumed for the fiscal 27 budget?
So the first part, yes, Laura went out and did comps for the other local programs. And that's what we based our decision on cost for this
And
year.
then 49 paying students. 49 paying students.
49 paying
Thanks.
students, okay, for fiscal 27. And so you're saying the 13,000 with the 4% increase is kind of comparable to other neighboring districts 5 days. Okay, thank you. Are there board questions?
That was my question,
Sarah.
because this is my favorite line item to increase every year. So just making sure that it's, it's comparable and we,
It is.
yeah. Okay, thank you.
Other questions on ELP? Okay, no board questions on that. Thank you very much, Shirley, and for everyone who's come to watch. And we're going to move on to athletics now. So unless you want to stay, if you're here for special education, we'll cover athletics with Mr. Manfredonia next.
He just stepped in.
So we're going to move on to athletics now, Mr. Manfredonia.
Thank you, everyone. So I am excited to show you RC11 athletic budget under a different lens than you have seen in years past. We took a lot of time and looked at, our requests for allocations, looked at what we have done with athletics over the last few years, what we plan on doing in the coming years, and how that kind of ties in to the number of dollars we're asking from the board this upcoming year. Want to thank the board for all the support that you have given the athletic department here at Darien High School. I think you'll see it in the joy of the kids who participate in the many sports we offer. And that's thanks to the good work that the board does. So I want to thank you on behalf of the students and coaches at Darien High School for the good work this board does. Okay. So just a reminder, this is an education-based athletic program. This statement is taken directly from the athletic handbook, that is education-based athletics. It's an extension of the classroom, and as such, we treat it as such when we making decisions on our programs. And to be consistent with other presentations you've seen here, you'll see where the check marks are for the operating standards for RC11, which includes providing excellence in teaching and learning, ensuring continual instructional program improvement, ensure breadth and depth of academic and extracurricular programming, provide the programmatic and financial support necessary to achieve district goals, and provide timely and relevant communication. I think you'll see some of those embedded in the presentation you're about to see. Areas of focus for this current year. So one of the areas of focus is supporting the physical and mental health of our students, as it is the entire district, which included some retraining of QPR, which is that suicide prevention program that an intervention that many of our staff had gone through several years ago. This is a kind of a rebrand of that program that all our head coaches are continue to go through this year, ones that have gone through it just after COVID, and then continuing on with this year as well. The athletic department works closely with Dr. Dad and the Director of Mental Health. We've had the good fortune of having her meet with our coaches seasonally. She's an excellent support for our staff. She has worked with individual teams on the mental aspects of sports, and so that's something we continue to look upon in the future as well as in the past as well. Something we wanted to highlight is our Captain's Council meeting, which meets seasonally during PLC time with myself and Mr. Mazzoni, one of our assistant principals at Darien High School. And the purpose and the goal of those meetings is to, it's the leadership development curriculum, which is talking about the importance role that they play as captains on their teams, and how they can establish the culture, establish the norms for their teams, and being an inclusive and positive team environment, setting those goals for the teams to have successful seasons. Looking at some numbers, we're proud to say that we had over 1,000 students participating in at least one sport during the 24-25 school year in Darien High School, which is about over 73% of the students enrolled at the high school. If you look at, those are unique athletes. If you look at dual athlete students that participate in more than one sport, we're at over 1,700 students participating in sports at Darien High School. So we're proud that we have a lot of students participating in the programs that we provide at Darien High School in athletics. Some of the account highlights I wanted to touch upon, that you'll see increases on. Coaching stipends is 2% higher than it had been, the previous year. There are no coaching requests in this budget. The 2% is per the board contract, with the teachers union. The transportation accounts for about a 3% increase, which is typically what we see from year to year. We'll continue to look for savings, in that account, with shared buses from athletic teams, teams going to the same location, sharing the buses. We use regular transportation for those students who are participating in a practice in town. So we're always looking for ways that we can save costs in that transportation account. And then we look at account for the outside facility rentals, which again is a shared cost, about a 2% increase for that account. And in the past, the district covers 30% of those costs, with the parents covering 70% of the costs. And later on, you'll see a slide which kind of breaks down what those sports are and what those expenditures are. These are the expenditures, the additions that you'll see in some of the accounts in RC 11. Stipend we just talked about in transportation. Officials is up next year. We're hosting the Turkey Bowl, so we're accounting for extra personnel, extra security for that event, as well as supplies. Supplies account really for the portable bleachers that we bring in for that event, that large event, which holds about 4,000 people at the stadium. It also accounts for the deferred uniforms from last year's budget that were deferred into this year's budget, which includes girls and boys soccer, girls and boys ice hockey, as well as girls basketball. Trainers, we have a contract with Evolution Physical Therapy to provide us 2 full-time trainers. That contract is going up a bit for next year. And then rentals, as we mentioned, will be going up as well as the fees that we use for students and teams to participate in events, indoor track, outdoor track, invitationals, wrestling events, things of that nature. So that account has gone up a bit as well. There is the table I referred to for rental sports. I just want to point out that diving is a completely Board of Ed contributed, paid for through RC 11. We continue to swim at the Darien Y, practice and compete. Number of years ago, the well there, the depth of the deep end of the Darien Y was deemed not appropriate to dive in. So now we dive and practice and compete in the Canaan Y. With that comes a cost that the board incurs. We do have reciprocity with the Y, that they use our facilities for their programming. We use their facility for swimming and gymnastics, and so there's reciprocity and agreement with the board and the Y for us to use their facility there. There you see the girls hockey and boys hockey breakdown. The sailing contribution is $375 per student per year. That money goes into an account to cover the cost of new boats every 8 or 9 years. We actually just bought a fleet of new boats for the sailing team last year, which was used for money from that account. So let's continue to grow that over the next 7, 8 years to purchase new boats in the future. The next few slides are going to talk about what we spend per student per sport. You'll see those sports highlighted with a star and/or a star and a plus. Star equals a JV program is offered in that sport. Starter Plus includes a JV and a freshman program in that sport. You see there's a wide variety of what we offer in terms of cost per pupil. Again, the dive stands out because of the assumed course the board has for the New Canaan Y for practice and competitions. Looking at the winter sports. You'll see that same high cost for the boys dive team again, because of that cost that the board incurs, and the breakdown of what we pay per pupil for those individual sports in winter. And then you'll see the spring breakdown. That's also in the budget book and on a one-page document as well, if you wanted to take a look at that on a one page. As we look forward to next year, how we can better support our student athletes and our coaches. We'll continue with the QPR training for all our new head coaches as they come on board. That'll be part of their onboarding process. We'll continue, of course, our collaboration with Dr. Dad and how we can support our students in mental health, which would include Sources of Strength training, which is the student-based club that will look to incorporate at the school. Youth mental health first aid training, which is 2 half-day training for coaches. It's offered through the town at no cost. We had a couple of coaches take that program a couple of years ago. So we're looking to offer that for our coaches for next year, which is it's a certification course that helps coaches better understand mental health issues and respond accordingly to others who may be experiencing distress. In an effort of increased communication, we're looking to launch a seasonal athletic newsletter, which will provide information on how teams are doing and functioning throughout the season, as well as updating our athletic handbook, which our students and families talk about how to go more in depth on student evaluation during tryouts and how cuts are communicated as well. There you see next steps. Budget meeting's coming up. I guess the next slide is email contacts. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have regarding RC11.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the presentation. I just had a couple very small questions. First, on the athletic trainers, it's increasing 10,000. Is that just contractual increase for the 2 trainers?
Correct.
So it's not a number of trainers?
No, it's still 2 trainers, 2 full-time trainers, about 40 hours per week each, and it's a contract to for next year.
Okay, thank you. And then there's a rental fee revenue of 120,000 or so. What is that from?
So that's the 70% of collection, right, Rich, that we collect from parents for their students to participate in the sports of boys ice hockey, girls ice hockey, boys and
I
girls
see.
squash.
Okay,
So that's the money that we take in as part of the 70%.
Right, no,
cost
it's
of
not
the
really
next
increasing.
year.
I was just
Yeah.
curious. Thank you. Are there board questions? Katie?
Thank you. Just feel the need to point out that swim and dive is one team. I know all the aquatic parents are listening and thinking about that, but they do compete together, even though they're broken out in this sheet as separate costs. Chris, rugby is an FCX sport, not a club?
So it's a varsity sport at Darien High School, both boys and girls rugby, but it's not an FCX recognized sport.
So rugby is not in a cost sharing? Did I miss that?
It is not. No, there's no rental fee associated with boys or girls rugby.
Okay, thank you. And then this is I guess a bit of a comment, and then I have one final question. Regarding the mental health, I'm really happy to see that that's a continued area of focus in Darien. And I'm really happy to see that we're looking to update our athletics handbook as well. I think there's always room to improve our communication between families and community and expectations. Regarding the mental health, I'd love to see us think about how we might support our students through injury. Especially in a competitive town like Darien, we can really tie a lot of our identity to certain aspects of ourselves, like being an athlete or being a certain position. And it can be quite devastating and very confusing if suddenly you're no longer able to actively participate as that part. So I'd love to see us think intentionally and maybe track how we can support our student athletes who are facing such a challenge. And then in terms of kind of like that tracking component too, to understand our students' trajectories, do we track participation over the course of 4 years? So like, for example, you broke out how many unique athletes that we have participating and how many total. I'm curious to look at how many seniors are participating in athletics and then compare that to how many of that same class graduating this year were participating as freshmen. I think that the more we can understand, barriers to participation, things that might have kids drop out, opportunities to get involved later. Yes, all of that. Just the way we do with academics, curriculum, we look to say, what's the trajectory of math? And if our kids start out, in freshman geometry, what are the paths? I'd love to see us do that with athletics as well.
Can I just add on to what Katie said about other mental health angles to look at and support? I also would love to see or find out if you do anything with disordered eating. I know a lot of athletes could use nutritional help, or in some athletics, people gain or lose weight to do specific things. So it'd be interesting or helpful to know if you have any sort of institutionalized help that way.
That's a great idea.
Thank you. Other questions? Dennis?
So I had the same point as Katie on swim and dive, and actually in your photo of the swim and dive team, it says swim and dive. So I think we really need to stop, except I realize that there's a cost and maybe we have to figure out how to do the cost for the diving. But the swimming, it's like saying the track and field are two different sports. They're one
We
sport.
can certainly improve upon that for next year.
But Mike, and thank you for this presentation. It was very interesting for me of how you laid it out. Specifically the fall, winter and spring sports. And when I sum up the fall, there's 621 athletes in the fall. There's 639 athletes in the spring, but there's only 461 in the winter. And I'm assuming, well, is there a limit on the number of students who can participate in indoor and indoor track, boys and girls, or do they just, because there's 90 girls who do cross country, there's 100 girls who do track, there's only 40 girls who are thinking or something, but it's a much less number doing indoor track. And we're almost 200 kids less in the winter. And I'm wondering why, and then the second question is, what can we do about that? Because it seems like there's 600 kids who want to play sports. Maybe they don't want to play it year round, but I would guess that they might want to if we had opportunities for them to do so.
So the answer to the first part of the question, no, there's no limit on the numbers of track athletes who we take on the winter for boys or girls. I have some assumptions why the numbers are lower in the winter. I think the winter season encompasses two vacations, the Christmas and the February vacation. So I think there's less participants in that season because of the commitment that the athletes would be here during the vacation and probably the want to go away. You see in the fall and the spring, some of our, if you're looking at the aggregate number of those two seasons, we have a lot of students that participate in soccer and football. And I think that brings those numbers up for the fall. In the spring, we have boys and girls across, which again, I think are larger participants. So, so we don't limit for the winter season for track or any of the fall or spring season for track. So, if I had to guess, it could be that the two vacations over the winter season could be prohibitive of students.
It's also not a unique phenomenon to Darien. This is very similar ratio for us in Rye previously. And I imagine if Chris checked with his colleagues in our neighboring districts, you would find the same pattern.
Just something I noticed and wondered if there's something we should or could do.
Well, I mean, with the success of Marty Supreme, maybe table tennis will come in.
Other questions?
I noticed on the cost share for parents, boys ice hockey, it's getting over $1,000. Is that correct per student or a parent to have their son in ice hockey?
It is. I think it's over 1,000 with the girls as well.
And is that getting a little bit out of line? Should you look at supporting that more? It seems high compared to the other sports is why I'm asking.
It's high because of the cost of ice,
Yes,
quite
yeah.
honestly. So that's why it's the highest. We
Or is
haven't
it
had.
limiting participation too? Because it's a little.
We've had a lot of boys specifically come out for the boys team, so I don't think it's limiting the number of participants. It's something that I guess we could discuss and look at, but we've always had the 70-30 cost
Yeah.
sharing.
Yes. Have you heard any pushback complaints about that we should? Just curious.
I haven't, but that doesn't mean that there aren't some issues. No.
And
I do think if we, my understanding is that the board at some point historically made a decision about that ratio. That would be a good larger conversation, looking at all sports, not just looking at that one in isolation, but considering them all
or we
together.
look at the 70-30 ratio and then we cap out-of-pocket expense for a parent. Maybe
Good thought.
something to consider.
But I understand there's some heated conversations over the years.
I think historically,
I see
we,
some people twitching at
we
the table.
had, we made the decision to provide ice hockey as a sport, and the cost was because you had to rent rink space. And so it was agreed that in order to be able to have this as a Darien High School sport, they would pay that money. And you're right, it gets expensive.
Point of order, that was 1969 when that was done.
And so this RC code also includes regular physical education classes in schools.
It does. Yeah.
And are there, so Joanna mentioned nutritional help, but not just for, I would assume that, is that part of the?
That would be something that's certainly covered in the health curriculum. We have had guest speakers though, come to some of our teams, talk about that exact, topic, how important nutrition is and healthy eating. But something also covered in the health curriculum as well.
Is health separate from the physical education in that?
It would be
respect?
also in RC 11. Health. Yeah.
John.
I know Dennis and Katie already mentioned it, but why is there no parent contribution for diving?
So again, I think the history has been that there's reciprocity for the swim and dive team to use the Darien YMCA. The swimmers practice there. The well at the Darien Y is too
Right,
shallow.
That's the previous state, correct? Not our current state at New Canaan?
So that's the current, I'm sorry.
I think it's the number of participants in dive. I think if you look at the participants, girls is about 6, boys a couple.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Less.
that's what it is. If you were to apply that formula, you would have one student paying 70% of $18,000 in order for there to be a swim and dive team. And without a diver, the swim team cannot be competitive.
Right.
So asking one person to pay $15,000 in order to make an
Right.
entire swim team competitive is,
That makes sense.
yes.
Other board questions? Greg?
Thank you for the presentation. Just as I've been listening into some of the questions, it's sort of, for me at least, like sports was a big part of my upbringing in Darien, being a member of a lot of different sports teams. It seems like there may be a broader conversation that we want to have, and I don't know if it's a different thing at the board table, or we're talking about mental fitness, we're talking about nutrition. There's a lot of different elements that are integrated into sports. There's obviously a lot of kids there. So just maybe understanding, like for me, like having a separate conversation around like, what is the ethos that we're trying to drive to our athletes? How are we trying to get more students to be physically active through sports? And if it's not through sports, through physical education or otherwise, to get people to understand like the benefits of that. I think that that's a big topic.
Yeah.
And I'm just suggesting maybe there's another, not for today necessarily, but another point in time when we could get your thoughts.
That's a great idea. Sarah?
I'm pretty sure Mr. Gowling just suggested a deep dive into RC 11. No, anyways, sorry. I don't, it's actually not budget related, but that number, the 73.4 of enrolled students that participate in a sport at DHS it's huge. Do you have any idea do you track like who does rowing or equestrian or fencing, or, how many of those students that are not doing sports at DHS? I'm just curious, like if this.
So we don't track the non-DHS sports. We do track though. So we have our signing day. You've probably seen, social media posts. We do invite those students that participate in those programs that are not offered DHS to be a part of that. So we do know we have, some that go on to compete at the collegiate level. So we do know that, and we don't track specifically how
I'm
many.
just curious what the percentage of the entire population would be.
Dave?
So I was going to ask one question. I see the bullet point here regarding the student evaluation during tryouts in terms of the update to the student handbook.
Mm-hmm.
Are we going to go into a little bit of detail into the evaluation and selection of leadership? I know I've had a number of questions from constituents over years as to how we do that and how we select captains or other leaders on teams. So I'm hoping we can have some guidelines and transparency so people can understand how that works as part of this upgrade.
Thank you. Joanna?
So when I think about athletics, I think about the student experience. And there's always these questions of equity. Some students that aren't athletics at all feel like the athletes get more attention and more money. And then even within the athletics budget, some teams feel like they get more money or attention than other teams. And so in order to try to understand, for me at least, what are the differences? I try to go through and find out things like uniforms, protective equipment. It's really hard from these handouts to parse out exactly what each athlete for each team is getting. Like for instance, this year, the cross-country cost and supplies is like $1,000 for 90 kids. And that's because 2 years ago, they got their uniforms. So it would be really helpful if possible, if we could get like a list of the cost of uniform and equipment per athlete per each sport over the course of the entire uniform, cycle replacement. Especially since as a board, we've now sort of put half the kids on a 4-year replacement cycle and half the kids on a 3-year replacement cycle. So we could just understand,
Sure.
where the.
I think Dave, I think your comments are really important for us to think about as we put together the handbook. I think helping families understand when we revise the handbook, like what comes with participating in that sport. I think there are great ideas coming across the table that I think will be helpful in that process.
Just
Thank
to
you,
follow
Katie.
up on that, I would just say that I think it could be really great to involve the community in the development of a handbook, asking, some of the captains' parents who are heavily involved, like what's working, what's not, what would you like to see updated?
Be a great use of the new public information officer too, to help us in building out a quality handbook. Sorry, just a plug for next week's presentation.
Good. Any other board questions? Okay, thank you, Mr. Manfredonia. Thank you very much for this presentation. And I think there were a couple follow-ups just on the kind of the mental health side with having some kind of an agenda item. I think that we could have more discussion around that, and then with the handbook development. To have more transparency in all of this, that would be great. So if there are no other questions, we can move to public comment.
Good evening. If you would like to participate in public comment, please approach the podium and wait to be recognized. Once recognized, please state your name and town of residence, and note that you have up to 3 minutes to comment. Please note the time with the chair.
Am I recognized? Jack Davis, 197 White Street. I want to go back to something that I didn't hear during your sports conversation. And please understand, I had 3 kids playing college and had about 15 varsity letters. I also had, my daughter was the first girl in Darien High School to win 3 FCIAC and 3 state championships in 3 different sports and was captain of 2 of them. Having a sport helps that student go through the ladder and separates them when they have the same SATs, the same grades to get into some of the schools that they want. We've seen that kids who play on boys lacrosse who never saw a varsity field, but because they were playing for Darien, are accepted into Division III schools because they were at Darien. I think that you have to look at the total picture of what this gives to kids. Many of our divers actually dive in college. So yes, it may be 1 or 2, and Katie's right. Without that, we don't have a swimming team that's competitive. And I think we have to look at the full picture of what these sports are offering. To Dennis's question, I know in one sport that I'm familiar with, and it may have changed in the 10 years, my youngest is 34. But if you're not on JV as a freshman, you're probably never going to see a varsity field. And that is on several of these others. I know that that kids are ranked of where you stand in varsity lacrosse. We've seen kids go All-American, 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 but they only played varsity as a starter 1 year because the prior kid was an All-American. So we just have to look at the full picture of what this offers the children. The other thing that's important with 2 daughters, sports is one of the top places to teach women teamwork. Boys have it more often. Sports are an excellent opportunity for that learning to exist. So all I'm saying is that when you start looking at sports, and I'm chair of F&B, so believe me, I look at numbers. This is beyond numbers. And so the same thing goes for the arts program that we have and some of the other programs there. Our kids continue. So it is more important than the numbers that we're sometimes spending. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other public comment? All right, I would like to have a motion to adjourn this meeting. Is there a motion? Sarah, seconded by Dennis, all in favor?